Okay, so welcome everybody to a Master Gardener's presentation on container gardening for the backyard gardener. My name is Jen Moreland, excuse me, and I will be moderating this Zoom session for tonight. We will be using the chat box for comments and for questions. I will relay all of the questions at the end of the presentation. Please address your chats to everyone. Do not address your chat to Steve. He is going to be busy presenting. So if you address it to everyone, I will capture that, and we will have 15 minutes allotted for questions. Tonight's presentation is courteous of the University of Arizona. We are Master Gardener volunteers for the Yavapai County Cooperative Extension. This is an outreach arm of the University of Arizona's College of Agricultural and Life Sciences. Master Gardeners are trained by the University of Arizona, and we provide science-based horticultural information to the public by staffing horticultural help desk lines in both Camp Verde and the Prescott Extension offices, as well as presenting talks like we're doing here tonight. So Yavapai County currently has over 200 active Master Gardener volunteers. We will have our next presentation in late January 2021. So we are taking November and December off. So please watch your emails for details with next year's presentations coming up. So at this point, allow me to tell you a little bit about Steve McIntyre. Our presenter tonight. Steve is an emeritus Master Gardener who volunteers at the UA Cooperative Extension Help Desk since 2009. He and his wife Diane have been Prescott residents for 12 years, and they currently live in the Williamson Valley area. Diane is the perennial gardener while Steve is the vegetable gardener. And Steve likes to save seeds and start his seeds. And most of their vegetables and annual flowers are grown from seed. Steve also volunteers with the Prescott Film Festival and sits on the Yavapai Exceptional Industries Board. Steve and Diane enjoy winter camping and independent foreign travel. So let's get started. Steve, the mic is all yours.
Wow, what an invitation. Let's just get me set up here.
Okay.
Click a few things and I'll be right there. And this looks like an interesting thing to do. Oh, it's not. All right, stand by.
We had it up for just a moment there.
There we go. All right, so how does it look?
We don't have your screen shared quite yet, Steve.
Okay.
Here it comes. There it is.
Okay. Now let's do just this. You don't want all the notes.
Mm-hmm.
Aha. I think we're finally there.
You're there. You're good to go.
All right. Well, very good. And good evening to everyone. It's my pleasure to talk about container gardening. I've done this talk to a local library, so but this is the first time that I've done it on Zoom, so it's going to be quite an experience, needless to say. Let's get started with a short story, though. I guarantee it's going to be about gardening. Now, you locals will recognize this, I'm sure, as the Prescott Public Library. And Diane and I, when we moved here 12 years ago, we thought this would be a good place to really get to know Prescott. So we wandered down there, and Diane went to the desk to find out about volunteer opportunities. And I wandered into the stacks. I was interested in what kind of research books they just might have. And I was very pleasantly surprised that they had a lot of books on gardening. And so I was there looking at the Sunset books and course, there's always the ortho books that tell you how to kill everything that might attack your garden. But as I was looking around, I spotted over sort of in this general area a little tiny book. And here it is. I just got it out and look at the title, Gardening in Granite. And that should have been a real eye opener as to now 12 years ago what we had essentially gotten ourselves into. But I want to read, and it's by the Garden Club. It's published by the original Prescott Garden Club. Uh, at that time, it was the oldest garden club, having been established, organized in 1931. The book itself was published in 1959, and in the back of the book, there's one area there that I'll just paraphrase it, and it says that container gardening is well suited for low-growing shrubs, annuals, geraniums, things of that sort. And I thought to myself, this is a great introduction to the presentation that we're doing right now. I want to be sure that you know that the book is not 12 years overdue. We actually, one of our good friends found the book here in Prescott in a used bookstore, and I really cherish this book. And it's got a lot of good information in it, and still very relevant. So that's my story of gardening in Granite, and let's go into actual container gardening. Gardening is fascinating. Why is it fascinating? A number of reasons. I think we'll say that it's fun. It does personal expression. Certainly, I dabble with watercolors and bright colors and things of that sort. And you can do the same thing with your container gardening. It's very relaxing, and we're not alone. Take a look at the very bottom there. 155 million people garden in the United States. That's over 50%. Uh, Annual sales in gardening related things is like around 70 million. To give you a perspective there, Lowe's, the garden or Lowe's has sales of about 72 billion. And I think that the Home Depot is somewhat above that. But it's that kind of a number that people are using, are actually spending on gardening and gardening materials. So what are we going to talk about tonight? Well, there's always advantages and disadvantages. We'll discuss some of them. What sort of things are critical in container gardening? Watering, fertilizing. You can grow a lot of vegetables in container gardening, and so we'll sort of dabble with that. Planting strategies. I want to tell you something to look forward to. This is going to be a multi-medium presentation, and we'll actually wander out to my greenhouse and do some potting, and I think that alone will be a little sidetrack that hopefully you'll be interested in. As I said earlier to people that as they were coming up and wandering into our presentation, comments are always something that I cherish. One of the reasons is that's when I really learn something. And even in a kind of constrained atmosphere that we have here with Zoom, if you have a comment, write it down, and as Jen indicated, you could actually use that in the comments, and the comments can go to anyone. And of course, questions. We'll do our best to answer the questions. I always feel that when I'm in a room full of and the Master Gardeners are sitting here, there, and over there, I really feel that this is I'm in good company, and questions will be answered. And I hope that is the case that when we're doing that tonight. So what kind of gardens do we have? Well, in my little realm of things, there's the in-ground garden. The shot over here in the upper left-hand side is my vegetable garden a couple of years ago that was kind of overgrown by a few weeds at that point in time. But in-ground is just one way that people have their gardens. A raised garden is another way that people can use that approach to gardens. And this is a very popular thing, especially here in northern Arizona, are the so-called trough containers. These are what the horses drink out of, and they raise the garden up so it makes it a little bit easier to work on. Here in the lower right-hand corner, lower left-hand corner, that is the YEI. That's Yavapai Exceptional Industries garden cart. YEI is a local nonprofit organization, and they make these things. They actually manufacture these garden carts right here in Prescott, and really they are magnificent. The picture really doesn't do it total credit. Made out of solid redwood, these little garden carts are a piece of furniture, to have on your patio. That's the end of my commercial. Also, there are other ways that we can have containers that are perhaps something that is more recognizable. But that's what we're going to talk about is container gardening, not houseplants. Container gardening is usually outside. It means that you're growing in your containers everything from zinnias to marigolds to tomatoes to I don't know what else, salad material, things of that sort. So that's what we're going to be talking about is things that are grown in containers and concentrate on that rather than expand it more into houseplants, which we can do that perhaps next time. Advantages. Probably the best advantage is obviously what it is, and it's gardening in small spaces. Um, Balconies, apartment balconies, small courtyards, patios, things of that sort. Small spaces is what we uh, normally think of as one of the advantages of container gardening. If you notice that YEI cart back there, it actually had wheels on it, or at least mine has wheels on it, and so you could move it around theoretically. However, that cart, when it's full of soil and has recently been watered, it probably weighs a good 200 pounds, so you don't move it very far. But think about this. Say you're an apartment dweller and you've got your container garden out there on that balcony and you move. And that certainly is one of the advantages. Size, things of that sort, that all makes a lot of sense. That you can really experiment with those sort of things in what you're growing. Another advantage of gardening in containers is you can get away from all the critters that you might have out there in your in ground gardening. Um, Gophers, for instance, squirrels, rabbits. There's a way of excluding uh, the things that you find normally, and by excluding them and putting up some kind of a way of keeping them out, it's really pretty straightforward when you do it with a container of some sort. Um, Here we can see upper right hand corner, it's sort of a screen that's wrapped around the containers. I don't think a squirrel was going to get through that. Um, Here's mine down just below it. This is the lower right hand corner. There's my garden cart, and yep, it has wheels on it. But what I actually constructed here is a framework out of good old PVC white pipe. And that fits over the container itself, as you can see. And then what I did is stretch over the actual framework is a bird netting, very lightweight bird netting that has about the netting itself has about a 1 inch square kind of format. But that keeps the squirrels out, and it also keeps the birds out, obviously. But the idea here is that you can sort of add on different things to your container gardening that makes it unique and makes it work for you. Other advantages. Um, Here in northern Arizona, it's not wonderful soil. There's something called caliche, which is almost like a layer of concrete that can be just a few feet below the top of the soil. It has to do with the high calcium content that we have here in northern Arizona. And it's something that it's it really is tough to garden in gardening with something like that. So a container garden would be a wonderful way of just sort of sidestepping that whole thing. Here's something I hate to admit, but limited mobility. As time goes on, I've got to admit that having my garden cart or the other containers that are closer to me that I can sort of pull up a stool and sit down and work in my garden, that is so much easier than and easier on the knees. Um, Gardening in containers is really it's something that beginners can do, and I've been gardening since I was I don't know 5 years old, so I find that it is for I guess I would consider myself an advanced gardener, but I really enjoy that there are always new things that I can do in my container garden that perhaps I wouldn't be doing in a in soil uh, situation. So containers, my gosh, just about anything can be a garden container. How many people have an old rusted out barbecue? Well, you put in the right kind of material on it and things of that sort, it could be just a very unique container garden. Here we have the lower left-hand corner, good old-fashioned concrete bricks. Makes fine little small garden. Clay pots, absolutely. Uh, I have not tried this, but it makes a lot of sense that over here that a rip bag could be used as a kind of makeshift garden. But there's one common denominator. We're not there yet. Uh, Tonka toys, ceramic containers, so forth and so on. But there is a word of warning here about old tires. Now, there's a reason that what do? We spend $3 or whatever it is per tire to have it carted away somewhere when we buy a new set of tires, and that's reason is that they're toxic, and yes, an old tire is not nearly as toxic as a brand new tire, but an old tire to be used as a container is a little questionable. Um, I guess the long and short of it is that probably for flowers it'd be just fine. Uh, I don't think that I'd want to grow my lettuce in an old tire. Who knows what it might taste like? But one thing you, of course, could do would be to put some kind of a container within that tire, if that is sort of what you had in mind, because it certainly is something that could be used for all sorts of uh, different ways in your container garden. There are a few disadvantages. One of the main disadvantages is that you probably have to water more frequently than you would in a container or in a in-ground garden. Basic reason you sort of consider it how much dirt you're using. There's an infinite amount of dirt, so to speak, in a in-ground garden, whereas the pot, you're limited to really, maybe a gallon or two of planting medium. But the idea is that uh, the soil itself uh, will will disappear faster. And of course, if you're growing things, the plant itself is sucking up a lot of moisture out of that pot, and it has just be aware that this is one of the things that you'll see in a moment, that there's a way that we can really check it out and monitor how much moisture we have. Of all the things we've talked about here, probably the most critical thing is that we must have adequate drainage. I can't overemphasize this. It really is critical. The whole idea here is you don't want your whatever you have growing in that container, you don't want it to be waterlogged. It is probably the most detrimental thing that can happen. But so if you're growing everything from tomatoes to marigolds to zinnias, make sure that whatever container you have has good drainage. And one of the things you can do if you buy this wonderful pot and you get it home and you realize, whoops, doggone, it doesn't have a drainage hole, that's something that you can correct using masonry drills or something like that. Now, this is so getting back to the adequate drainage. I can't say enough that this really is important. Well, let's talk about container soil. Um, it needs to be something that drains well, retain moisture, and be well aerated. Why would you say it has to drain well and sort of retain moisture? It almost sounds like an oxymoron, but really, the soil itself can have these different attributes, and then there's a number of ways that you get there. And let's just take a look at how you might do that. A sterile potting mix, good old get it at Home Depot kind of bag it. It's a wonderful way of getting quickly a planting medium that you can get into your container garden itself. Some of the products that are out there will actually have fertilizer in them, and it works very well. I don't like sterile. I don't like growing things in a sterile atmosphere, sterile mix. So there's a number of do-it-yourself mixtures that we have found work well in container gardenings over the years. And here's one that is has three parts to it. But notice here in the middle that it actually has native soil. Native soil is one of the three. And the reason we want native soil is it is full of all sorts of bacteria and fungi and things like that. And it is alive. The soil is alive. Soil all by itself, though, would be pretty, even our decomposed granite here in northern Arizona, that soil would be pretty compact. So what can we do to make it into, remember the three things that we needed? It was the hold moisture, but also something that would drain well. Peat moss is a good addition, about 1/3 peat moss, native soil, and perlite. And let's talk about peat moss for just a moment, though. It's a little controversial. Peat moss certainly holds water. That's the whole reason for adding it to the native soil mixture. But peat moss, it's got a bad, in today's being careful of our atmosphere, it has a lot. The peat moss itself, when it is harvested, lets out a lot of carbon dioxide. And this, of course, is one of the major greenhouse gases that have become very knowledgeable of. So, peat moss has got a bad rap right now, but there is a substitute. Good old compost comes to mind, but woody materials that has been composted. That means that it actually has been in your composted perhaps for a year, but is going to have the same kind of ability to suck up that moisture and hold it um, as part of your mixture that you're going to put into your containers for your garden. Perlite perlite is another mixture. Again, it's one third, one third, one third. And perlite is it's actually a mined mineral, a mined mineral. And yeah, it kind of looks like styrofoam, but it isn't. It actually is little pieces of this mined material that sort of adds room. I just sort of adds room to your soil, and that's where you get the it's aerated. In other words, and this is certainly very important. So the three things that go into the do-it-yourself mixture uh, takes the place of a potting mix, but my personal choice is because it is alive. And what happens, what that means is that it's forever producing more nutrients that your plant is going to need. And because it's breaking down the different, the bacteria is breaking down different parts of the soil itself. So that's the reason that I like to have a sort of your own mixture. Location. Whether you have an in-ground garden or you have one of the YEI push-around carts, or you have wherever you put your garden, you need 6 to 8 hours of good sunshine for vegetables and for annuals. Probably don't need that much for herbs and lettuce and things of that sort. Um, I think any garden needs to be convenient to water. And certainly here in good old windy northern Arizona, a way of keeping your garden out of the wind. That really is important. I think we really got a good dose of that this summer in the July or actually August and September timeframe when uh, the winds were just voracious and many comments. Not only was it hot, but it was windy, and to keep your garden um, watered was a real challenge. So location is important. All right, watering. Watering is actually a very scientific way of checking out whether or not you have to water or not. It's called the tip of the finger. The idea is that down to your first knuckle is about an inch. And so the idea here is that you take, you're wondering, well, maybe I should water this, my container here. Maybe I should water it. We don't know. Well, let's find out. Dip it down into your pot, and if it, bring it out, and if it has sort of a coating of dirt on the end of your fingertip, you don't need to water. Why? Because it's moist down there, and because it's moist, it's stuck to your finger. Now, if you stick it all the way in, comes out clean, means you have to water, or it's time to water because there's no moisture down there. Another way is not quite as scientific, perhaps, but it is certainly a good way of figuring out whether or not you have to water, is if the soil is pulling away from uh, the surface edges of your container. It says that it's time to water. Now, many parts of the United States, and certainly here again in Arizona, there's a lot of salts in our water supply, a lot of calcium, and that could build up in your planting medium because you're going to be watering it quite often. So the idea here is to water, 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 and watch it and it starts coming out at the bottom of your container. Then you know that any potential salt buildup has a good chance of not happening. Like any other garden, top mulch is always a good thing to add to both containers and to your in garden in in your in ground uh, um, vegetable garden or whatever you might be growing. Mulching is good. Now let's talk a little bit about special conditions. Um, the sort of greenish tongue that is down here in that saucer of this is actually a pelargonium that I planted. And I noticed that because the water system that I had was watering the pot daily, that it would really, from day to day, I was ending up with a lot of water in the saucer, a lot of water in the saucer. And we've talked about not wanting to get the roots of your plant waterlogged, and I was concerned that that might happen. So what I added is what we call it's like a water wick. It's a piece of just a piece of terry cloth. I ripped up a towel, and you can see about the size. It's about 2 inches wide and about a foot long or so. And you engineers out there would know this as capillary action. What happens here is that, and it's a way of the water molecules will sort of come up and over that edge, and you end up then draining down here onto whatever it is. You could stick a bucket, obviously underneath the water wick. But this is a way that in about 2 hours or so, that and you might start with the uh, basin full, and in about 2 hours it'll be almost empty. And it's a kind of a neat way of uh, um, moving water around with that water wick or capillary action. Fertilizing. Yep, good. Frequent watering will leach out fertilizer. Well, all right. So there are some things that we can certainly do. Half streak fertilizer for vegetables, every couple of weeks kind of thing. Um, Word of caution though, if you're growing tomatoes, if you're growing tomatoes, you don't want a full up vegetable vegetable fertilizer like equal amounts of 10, 10, 10, for instance. You want something that is low in that first number, which is the nitrogen. The nitrogen will make uh, your tomato plants grow like crazy. They'll be nice and green, but guess what? They're not going to have much fruit. The tomatoes themselves, the number of tomatoes is going to be a lot less because all that energy is going into growing the plant itself. So there is fertilizer made especially for tomatoes, and it is something that is low in nitrogen. Um, like I already said, that flowers, yes, use your regular about every month or so. Uh, I also tried using this so-called bloom this year, and it actually works. This is where in the second number, which is the phosphorus, we got that good and high, and that really is what flowers need to oftentimes for second blooms and things of that sort. All right. Whole idea here is that you want to match your container to what you want to grow. And sort of there's a few things here that you can sort of get an idea of the size you need. Um, it was interesting with our frost that we had, I guess, what was that, Monday night. I was out pulling up all the unfortunately dead tomatoes and eggplants and all sorts of things that had died overnight. But it gave me a chance to look at the root structure. And I was just fascinated by the size of the roots. Tomatoes, I had that in my YEI garden cart, and it grew all the way down to the bottom. That's 18 inches. They were huge. Eggplants, not nearly as much. They were more like just kind of a, big as your fist kind of root structure. And bush beans were well, about the same. Um, Carrots, you need something that is whatever the length of the carrot is going to be. So if you're uh, growing a 12-inch carrot, you better have 12 inches of room there to grow them in. Things like lettuce uh, needs very little, very little. Radishes, I mean, a radish doesn't need very much room for its growth. Herbs would be about the same thing. But I was surprised also to see that cosmos, you know, once you have cosmos in your garden, you've got it as a friend forever. And cosmos is something that has a very shallow root structure, which I was sort of surprised. Zinnias, zinnias can have substantial roots in them. So the idea here is that you try to size your container. Well, look at it the other way. Get the container and then figure out what you're going to plant into it. I think that perhaps it's a good way of looking at it. So the idea here is to match your container to what you want to grow. All right, here's that multimedia thing that I promised. Let's plant something. Stand by.
So we're going to do 4 things, actually 3 things in this potting exercise. We're going to prep the pot, fill the pot, and then plant the pot. And we're going to do that all in less than 5 minutes. Our first task in preparing the pot for planting is going to be to come up with a way of stopping the dirt within the pot from leaking out. When it gets wet, it'll start to move. And the idea is we want a sort of a filter that'll stop the soil from coming out the bottom, and it oftentimes will become a plug, and that's the last thing we want in our pot is a plug of any sort. The archaeologists amongst us might call these pottery shards with an S, but they're just pieces of old pots. But they make a rather good filter that we're going to place in the bottom of our. So we'll just move these shards over the hole, something like that. There's still lots of airspace between the pieces, and that'll allow the water to go through, but will hopefully stop most of the pot dirt from leaking out and becoming a plug. So here's our pot. It's been cleaned up. It's been scrubbed with a wire brush, and it's almost ready to go into the next stage, which would be planting it. But before we do that, we want to sanitize it. The way we're going to sanitize it is with a very weak bleach solution. This is a quart container of water, and we added about half a cup of bleach. So it gives it a very faint bouquet, we'll call it, of bleach. And that's actually pot and sanitize it. Now I think it's good practice that you fill the pot, about a third full or so into your planting material. Let me show you the planting material before we go any further. It's been pre-wetted. By that I mean that you have added water to it, but it still is quite formed. You could form a hand like this, of handful of dirt, but notice that it will readily fall apart. This is about the amount of moisture you want. When you squeeze it, you don't want to have any water come dribbling out of it. That would be way too much water. So it's pre-wetted, but it's just the right amount when it can crumble like that. So our pot is about half full. Let's get the marigolds. Here we go. It has pretty good roots on it. Hold the marigolds about where you want it, and we'll start filling it in with dirt on top of the dirt that's already there. Now you'll notice that the pot is not full all the way to the top. There's about an inch of headroom there, we'll call it. And that's good to leave that kind of room so that when you are watering it during the actual growing time, the water can be sort of flooded on top and then take its own time to go down into the root area. Now we're going to work the soil down into the pot itself and around the roots as best we can, firming it up, not pushing too hard, but the idea is you want to have the soil actually around the roots itself. There's one more thing that we're going to do. The last step in our planting procedure here is to add water to the newly planted plants. The idea is that you want to sort of liquefy the soil medium, and it will allow it to then adhere to the roots itself and avoiding any kind of voids or open places. Put about a cup of water for each plant. So that's our three-step planting procedure for potting. And the next thing, of course, is to put it out wherever you are going to grow your container garden and jump back and wait for those first blooms.
All right, so we've got everything planted and we're going to jump back. But before we jump back, let's look at what sort of, when do we want to do all this? And this is actually a bulletin from the Yavapai County Cooperative Extension. It's bulletin number 51, and it gives different times for different vegetables. For instance, pole beans over here. In the Prescott area, they're talking about sometime in the middle of May. It's rather complete, and it's available. It's available from the Cooperative Extension. I think that the very end of our presentation, you're going to have a way of actually getting into the website and sort of follow your nose in the website. You can finally get down to the different bulletins, and there's a lot of different things that the Cooperative Extension puts out, and really good stuff. So we talked a little bit about tomatoes and peppers and how much room they need and things of that sort. We have over here, I'm going to give you some of the things that I have found grow very well, at least here in northern Arizona. And the tomatoes, the brand new one for me at least, was something called a early treat hybrid. It's made by, here it is. It actually is produced by Burpee Seeds, and it says 55 days when you put the plants out. Well, I think it's closer to about 75 days, but still, this little, it's about as big as a golf ball, but they just keep coming and coming and coming, and it was still producing up until Monday night when the frost finally got it. Eggplant and peppers grow well in containers. This is a good time to think about going vertical. Think vertical. Find a way of supporting those peppers and eggplants so that when they do start to produce fruit, they're going to have support. Down here, squash. Believe it or not, squash and cucumbers are good candidates for small-ish container gardens. There's something called the Space Master that actually is a very, it's not a, it grows in a very small area. It's a bush type, in other words. And certainly loose leaf lettuce, I think one of my favorites is arugula. Arugula can be grown very well in a container garden, be it a clay pot or something that's larger. Somewhere I've got a picture of arugula that is growing and coming out through a recent snowstorm. It is very hardy, and to have that kind of fresh lettuce in the middle of the winter is really something that is a fun thing to do. Again, container gardening really, I think this is a lot of fun. Strategies. Got to have strategies. Succession planning is of interest. This is where you plant the same thing, but you plant it some days apart. Intercropping is another way of producing this. And the last thing we have here is the so-called intensive planting. This would be the square foot kind of gardening. So, what are we going to take away from all this last few minutes? Drainage is really critical. Drainage is something you want to pay a lot of attention to. Containers are going to need more watering than your in-ground kind of garden. Fertilizing gardens, fertilizing your vegetables uh, has probably a higher need than you would because of the leaching effect than you would again in ground. All right, lots of thanks here. I've stolen things from all over the place. There is that square foot gardening by Bartholomew. I recommend it. It's a good read and certainly well worth the energy. Oh, one last thing. One last thing. Uh, this may look like an old cement mixer. That's what it is. But just think, if I could find a way of taking that whole top cylinder off and then put it in the garden, I think it would really make a wonderful container. I probably should check with Diane before I go further with this. What's that? Oh, she says, I want to paint it red. All right, we can do that. All right, I'm about through. Comments and questions. It's back to you, Jen.
Okay, that was wonderful, Steve. Thank you so much. And man, that was a great presentation. We learned a lot. If you want to stop sharing your screen at this point so that we can see your beautiful face while you answer, we have a couple of questions rolling in. Our first unanswered question, we had a couple of good answers scrolling through the chat box, so I do appreciate everybody's participation during this presentation. But iPhone Ann wants to know, do you use a drip system for your containers?
Yes, yes. I have it on the regular, the whole garden is on a drip system. And for the annuals, I'm watering every day. And so it's an easy thing just to run a hose, so to speak, with an emitter on it up to the areas that have in pots. And as I indicated, sometimes they're probably getting a little too much water, but it doesn't seem to be that detrimental.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Connor wants to know, are there any native plants that do well in containers?
Well, native plants, for the most part, need very little irrigation. I think and anything that grows in native soil, I think would certainly grow in a container. You probably don't need the kind of amendments though that we put into the do-it-yourself. I think the way I'd approach it is probably just use native soil and put it into the container, and then transplant your native into that.
Okay, good answer. And then Kathy says she has several containers this summer with vegetables. She thinks they were overcrowded and didn't produce as much.
Oops.
Could this be the reason I didn't get as much to grow? Example, tomatoes and peppers in one pot.
Yeah, I think companion planting, you're probably fine. You might want to do a little, do a search on that and see if there's anything that would preclude you to wanting to plant those two together. Um, Water might have been a concern. You've got a lot of stuff there that needs lots of water. Again, it might be a concern. But I think that main thing is that you need to have the depth. You need to put it in a container that has the depth that if the roots are going to be of any length. So that would be the thing, is to do a little research on how much you would normally have to have.
Okay, Kathy says there was plenty of depth. I also want to point out that this summer was extremely difficult with
Oh,
the heat. I know I got less production, and I think it was the heat on my crops. So let's see. iPhone Ann is asking, what is your favorite vegetable to grow in a container and why?
tomatoes. Can't have too many tomatoes. And, and again, any kind of sort of patio tomatoes. This guy right here, uh, I don't own stock in Burpee, but I think that I've just had such good luck with these early treat hybrids. I don't think, but that doesn't mean you could grow small things. Uh, Even heirlooms. Heirlooms would work just fine in a pot. They probably need a little more room though.
And I'd like to put a plug in too that the Master Gardeners will have a tomato success survey that is published. I think, is it January that we publish that?
I believe it is, yeah.
Mhm. So we'd be happy to share that with you through the help desks. So Gail Rowland says that she had issues with tomato blossom end rot, and she wants to know the cause.
It is such a very common thing here during the monsoon season. Normally, that is caused by just erratic watering. Not a lot you can do about it because that erratic is coming out of the sky. But it's where you would have a long stretch, and then all of a sudden you're going to have this thunderstorm, and it's very erratic, and the tomato says, ah, and it gives you a big black spot. That's usually what it is. But but cut out that black spot and you still get a wonderful tasting tomato.
That's right. Still edible.
Still edible and enjoyable.
That's right. So let's see. iPhone Ann is saying, can we sign up for a newsletter to get gardening tips or other info? We don't really have a newsletter. We have, I'll put a, well, you're part of the help desk. I'll let you put a plug in for the publications. Go ahead.
Oh, certainly. Call us. We're right now, because of the COVID virus, the help desk is not manned, so to speak, personed. But we still are answering questions, and you can go to, oh gosh, what is it? MG, oh gosh.
You're asking what are the
You
email addresses?
ask questions with email, and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, let me see if I can grab those emails maybe and put them in the chat box, or maybe Lauren, can you grab those emails and put them in the chat box for the help desk emails? So
let me get back to a regular time, and the help desk is Monday through Friday during normal operating hours, except we're closed at noontime. But please give us a call. If we don't have the answer, we'll find out. We'll get an answer for you and answer all the questions you might have. And we like to do it because it adds to our repertoire of things we know.
That's right. And we have just all kinds of PDF documents that we can send links out to, and a lot on vegetable gardening, especially. So, okay. So it looks like Tracy, wow, Tracy, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name.
Rider.
Okay. It looks like Tracy's published a link to the website for the gardening.
Good.
So, and I don't see any new questions rolling through. Anybody have any last minute questions? And okay, and maybe Steve, I'm going to put one out there to you, and we'll give everybody another minute to get questions up because we still do have plenty of time.
Make it an easy one.
I travel and I have containers. So do you have a favorite way to put some kind of watering system on my containers while I travel that I can be fairly sure they're alive when I get back home.
Fairly sure. Well, that um, certainly the hose and battery timers are a wonderful way of doing it, where you can actually run a hose. Usually, you put the timer on the faucet and then run a hose, and you can just use your normal um, techniques of emitters and things of that sort. Very versatile. You can have it run for minutes to hours, and it can be every day or every other day. And I've used them exclusively. One cautionary thing, though, is we're in a well here, and there's just enough sand in that well that it will force the little hose end timer to sort of stay open. But you can buy a very inexpensive filter to go between the well and the timer itself, and that seems to take care of it. Just be aware that if it isn't city water, you got to make go the extra distance.
Go the extra distance. That's right. And Carl Roberts, or Carrie, excuse me, Carrie Roberts has offered that I should turn wine bottles up into the soil. So I'm wondering how long it would take to drain a wine bottle. How long do I have? How long can I go away on a wine bottle? So, okay, fantastic. Well, Steve, we really appreciate your presentation today, and you've got lots of compliments in the chat box for a great presentation offered. Do you have the slide by any chance that has the contact information for?
Yes,
So while you're putting that up, let me just remind everybody that as we come to our conclusion here for this presentation, that we are going to take November and December off, and we will have a next presentation in January of 2021. And so watch your emails for that. We will have a list of topics and dates for next year coming out soon. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight. And on your screen now is the website, and you can find all kinds of documents, and you can find contact info. And once we get the help desks open again, you can find a way to walk in with all those insects and diseased plants for us to look at together. So thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate you being here, and hope to see you again in January. Have a great holiday season, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.